Hi guys, welcome to another code film. Alright guys, so if you've been following me of late, you realize that we had this series on IP addresses and computer networks whereby we try to look at it from a developer's point of view in regards to host, what's the meaning of a host? When you say host, what are packets, and also some practical aspect of it. In this code film, which is the last um, episode for this series, we want to talk about the TCP IP model. Um, so someone asked, what about it? I don't know, but when I first encountered this model, I didn't really appreciate it that much, because it looked so theoretical to me. I didn't see the practical essence. And even when they taught us in university, I think I still struggled to uh, appreciate the whole layers and some saying it's all work is working at once. It looked ambiguous to me, honestly. So out of development, or the more you strive to become better, I think I started seeing the reality of this, and that's what I want to share. A good example is probably if you are browsing the internet, you could have come across this text. This is not available in your country, or it could be in the other um, direction, or it could be in the positive. So you ask yourself, how does it know my country? Because honestly speaking, when you connect to the internet, you do not know how the platform knows your location. So it got me thinking, because that really got me thinking for a very long time, because I was like, how is this possible? Because especially when I think Spotify was now coming to Ghana. Oh, that's my location, current location. He said this is not yet available in your country. I was like, how is that possible? Because how do you know that I'm here? I'm in Ghana. Like, how do you know? So the catch here is that it's all based on the TCP IP model. And that's the truth, because once you establish connectivity to once you establish connectivity to a server which is in another country, uh, indirectly the TCP IP model has already started, but you don't even know that it has started because of the way it looks like that. No wonder they say it's a framework, or it's a protocol, or it's a set of protocols, or most of the time it's a set of protocols, or every layer. There are 7 layers or 8 layers. There are 7 layers. That's the OSI, and then when you take some out, it's close to like six or so for the TCP IP. So it's all happening at once. So let's just go straight into the code from gradually. So what we want to look at this is that we have a real-time project here, which we developed here at Code Films, and with that project, we want to demonstrate or even look at the TCP/IP model as and when it's taking place. So this application is such a way that wherever you're coming from, if you're coming from a particular country and then you want to access resources, or you want to um, get use a particular service, the platform or the service here will determine where you're coming from. So based on your location, it will tell you if you can access that resource or not. So we are actually going to do it here. Some websites have done it, but you don't know how they've done it. But here we are going to do it, and we're also going to see the TCP/IP model in play. So someone say you mentioned the OSI TCP/IP model. What's that? So it's just basically I say it's a framework, or it's a governing authority that says that if you want two devices to communicate, or you want to send traffic or transport traffic to and fro from different hosts or central hosts, there has to be some principles or some framework, or there has to be a governing authority that says this is how every device should communicate. Like, these are the laid down standard procedures. And the reason is that every device can come from different manufacturers. So you don't want the case whereby Apple devices, when they want to connect to the internet, they have to go through this route. MacBooks, sorry, HP or operating systems by Windows when they want to connect, they go by that. It creates a lot of confusion because there is no standard. There is no standard. So we want to do standardization, and that standardization is what has brought this universal model. That's the TCP/IP model. So for those who don't know much about it, we have different layers: the application layer, presentation layer, session, transport, network, data link, and physical layer. And every layer has protocols it works with. So the information or the application that you want to access over the internet, for example, Facebook, you first have to have established connectivity. That's you first have to have had interaction with the physical layer. And the datagram that moves from this layer all the way to the top will respond from the top to the down. So basically, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. So the question is, how does it get started? So let's look at that now. So it gets started when, first of all, you as a user, you decide to go and buy um, a router or a modem from an internet service provider. The day you bought that router from the internet service provider, the internet service provider registered you on their platform or took some details about you on their platform, but you don't probably you just thought that it's one of those normal purchases like, hey, I want modem, okay, maybe bring me your ID, then you fill the ID, bring me this, or you just bought it. And then it depends on how you decide to register. Oh, okay, what's your SIM? They'll give you a SIM and you took your details, then you register on their platform. Then they gave you the router. So the router they are giving to you is their device that can help you to communicate on the internet. And there's a reason to that. The reason is that you as an individual, it may be very expensive for you to connect directly to the internet. So there are authorities and bodies in place that have made it possible in such a way that people who want to connect to the internet will don't have to do it directly. Just imagine if you have a server in China, you have resources in China, you have resources in Russia, you have resources in Dubai, and you want to access all these resources. Are you going to take a pen drive and fly all the way to Dubai, get your information, and come back? No, just imagine 1 billion people or 1 million people all trying to get that same resource from Dubai. You get it? So there has to be a body that can say that no, for everybody that wants to get to access the global network for any information or resource they want, there has to be an ISP, Internet Service Provider. So the Internet Service Provider has gone to talk to some big, in quotes, big organizations, or is serving as a middleman between you, the end user, and then the global network organization that have come together to ensure that the internet is accessible to all. So someone say, how is all that? I still don't get it. So the thing, what is really happening is that every continent has. I'll show you a diagram of that. Every continent has some internet registry, or there are authorities for every continent. So if you take, let's take a continent like um, Africa. If we take Africa for example, if we take Africa for example, all devices here, when they want to communicate with each other, or if the internet, or if the computers, or all the computers in Africa want to speak to each other, there's a body that has come together, and that body has, in other words, they've connected the cables, all the because it's a telecom or telecom duty. They've been able to establish connectivity to all devices. How do they do that? Because you have to join their platform. That's the key. That's the national. If you are not part of the, if you don't have a telco that you are registered to, if they have established any form of connectivity or wires, you don't have access to those wires because you have to be registered with them. So that's the reality. So if now you want to speak to the computers or devices in um in Brazil, or there's it's northern Southern American um countries, The same way they have telcos over there. So those telcos have been able to set up an infrastructure whereby once you join their platform, let's say you join a Vodafone platform at Brazil. Once you join the Vodafone platform, you can speak to all Vodafone subscribers. Perfect. Now, if you want to go onto the internet, all Vodafone subscribers in Brazil who want to speak to resources on the internet, they all have to have established a form of connectivity between all the telcos. What does that mean? That means that there's another body that sits to ensure that if it comes to internet, all you telcos, you come and plug to us. Then when you plug to us, based on that, whether I'm on Vodafone and I'm accessing the internet or I'm on MTN and I'm accessing the internet, it doesn't matter because there's another regional body, which is the Regional Internet Registries. They ensure that if you are from MTN, you set up your MTN infrastructure, you come, you speak to us, then we get you touched. We take you on board, and in other words, we allow you to have access to the global network. Then Airtel, then Vodafone also comes. They do the same for Vodafone. So you realize that it doesn't matter where you're coming from. So if you're a developer, you develop something in this Brazilian continent or in Brazil, you realize that probably you intended it for it to be just for your country or your nation. With that mindset, all you did was that you made the resource available to your country people. So in making the resource available to your country people, MTN subscribers can have access to it because there's a regional authority that ensures that anything that goes on in that region, they ensure that all devices can speak to each other in that region. So it's like a framework. That's the whole thing. There's a framework that's been laid down, and then you have to follow. The telcos have to follow. All telcos have to follow suit. So if right now you want to speak to servers or resources in Russia, there's going to be some cables, because it's actual ones and zeros that are being transmitted. So if you want to speak to computers here. The same way the OSI model says that there has to be a physical layer. That's the same thing as to they will connect cables under the water, under the ocean, all the way to Russia, all the way to whichever continent it is. So there are cables lying in the sea, and these cables, once they are lying in the sea, if it's coming from Russia and it's entering this continent, the regional authorities said these are cables from Russia, so they'll label them. These are from the European continent. They'll label them and then they'll hook them to their sites. So they have the entry. So they are the gateway. So they have that gateway to Russia. So once they plug them into the continent, then they start distributing it for every country in that continent. So basically that's it. It's as simple as that. So I'll go online now. Let's go online and let's first understand the regional internet registry. Then later, when we appreciate that, we will start checking applications that have been showing something like this. This is not available in your country or in the positive. So let's go online. Probably looks so ambiguous. You're like, what's the meaning of all this? So let's go online. All right. So online, let's check this. Let's go to the regional internet registry. So there are a number of them, like 5 for every continent. So for every continent, let's go to images. I'll just choose any one of them. Open linking tab. And then let's also check this site too. Submarine cable map. Yeah. Alright, so let's open this too as well. So for every continent, that's we're explaining, there are bodies that ensure that internet access is coordinated or is controlled or is managed appropriately. So there's a body for it. So let's look at this first. So yeah, so once you see this, you will understand the rest. So good. So you realize that this is African continent and this is the South American continent. So you can actually see that these are all cables that are connecting various computers or resources all over the world. So there are entry points to every country. There are entry points. There are entry points. So this is entry point to Accra, Ghana, Togo. This is an entry point to Brazil. This is an entry point to Argentina. This is an entry point to Venezuela. So if you hear something like this country doesn't have internet, all they are saying is that the submarine cables there have probably been cut off because there has to be a physical connection or laying of cables from one continent all the way to another continent. If we don't do that, if all computers here have to speak to each other in another continent, how are they going to speak? Because they have to have a there has to be some form of connectivity. There has to be connectivity has to be established. So if they will lay cables to ensure that. So once the cables are laid, if the entry to Russia is here, which simply means that once the entry is established, the internet service providers here can have access to that entry and distribute the internet. So we realize that in previous time there was a power cut or there's an internet shutdown in Africa some time ago in Ghana. So in Ghana, I think it was Africa. Yeah, for a long time there was no internet for a long time. So internet shutdown disrupt business just recently. Just recently. So it took some number of days. So yeah, it was a very was a I think it was almost close to a global problem. But it was for the African continent because it was mostly for the African continent. So what it means is that there's distraction of multiple undersea cables for mobile and fixed data services nationwide. So that's what just happened. Some of the cables got destroyed, and out of that, there was no internet because of the physical connectivity of the of the internet. So that's the infrastructure. So this is just for you to appreciate it. Now, the Regional Internet Registry comes into play when the internet service providers want to have access to all these cables that are coming. So the cables have been laid, but who is going to ensure that, or who is going to organize in such a way that all the telcos will pass through a certain appropriate medium so that they all have access to the internet. So there are authorities in place that are doing that. And these authorities, even just the list of the authority, we also have authorities. The main authority or the global authority is ICANN. And ICANN is that global authority that ensures that there's internet. And it's a non-profit. So ICANN works with IANA. So IANA is actually the IP address unit of the ICANN. So IANA is more of um, IP addresses. So it's a department for the ICANN. So that's what's going to facilitate all the registries and the regional registries of the IP addresses. We are getting there gradually. I don't say IP address, but of the internet. So with those out of the way, if you decide to let's look at this diagram. All this I'm explaining to make sense later on. Internet and ISPs. There's a diagram I want to show. Yeah, so let's look at this. Can we check this too out? So all this we are gradually getting into how they know your location, other details. So as you see it now, this is the regional internet registries from this diagram here. This with the site, you can check them out later. Or you can also look at this one too. I prefer this one. Let's just look at this one for now. So you realize that this you are the end user and you are going to speak to the local internet registries. That's the internet service providers and maybe national internet registries, NCAs. For you now, let's just take one step at a time. But before that, these are the regional internet registries. They are the authorities in charge. So the cables are coming all right, but hey guys, who is going to oversee all these cables and IP addresses to make sure that this country will have IP addresses, here to have IP addresses. So that allocation and coordination is being done by the bodies over here, the big boys or the big organizations over here. They are the ones going to do that. So once they do that, the internet service providers just come into play and then they just share the internet to you. So how are they sharing the internet? They are sharing the internet because they'll give you IP address. That's how they are sharing it. So if you look at the, let's look at our terminal. Let's look at this. If I get my IP address, realize that it says that because I'm going on Wi-Fi, it tells me this is my IP address. And who's giving me this IP address? This IP address is coming from my internet service provider because they gave me a router. And then this router they gave me, if I assign an IP address to me, you get it. So they are the ones giving me the IP address. They've labeled my device or my computer on their network. And that one is also coming, and that one is coming from the big organizations or the other the other middleman that is trying to help you to get internet or the other body. And that body is the big guys here. So in Africa, from Africa, Afrinic is one. You get it. So Afrinic has seen that all the cables have come to the continent. We like that. But now, how are we going to label all devices on the internet? So this body is going to ensure that coordination and going to start, okay, for Airtel Tigo, we'll give them this number of this IP addresses, this IP addresses. So they have a way of classifying or coordinating that so that there are no miscommunication anywhere. So they have a way of doing that. So we'll give these IP addresses to this telco. When it's coming to their gateways or it's coming to them, they'll have a way of knowing or querying or finding out that this request is coming from Airtel Tigo, but with this IP address. This one is coming from Vodafone with this IP address. They have a way of doing that. They'll have a way of labeling them. So that's just the understanding of this the framework over here. So just for you to know that there are higher powers in place. So ICANN, then IAN, then the regional, then the local internet service provider, then end user. So you yourself too, you can become an internet service provider. With this understanding, you just need to speak to the right authority and you have to provide your solution. So this is just for the layered approach. That's for the physical connectivity. By now, due to Elon Musk's creativity and his genius ability, this is shunning away because now they are deploying the internet um, all over in space. So if you try this out now, Starlink is a different way of getting internet. So instead of we having this physical layer connectivity whereby just in case a cable cuts, all of us don't have internet because they are physically connected. Why don't we use technology to use and that technology is satellite technology, and that's a brilliant idea from the man himself, Elon Musk. So they deploy satellites, and then those satellites they put them in orbit, and once they put them in orbit, they're able to share the internet. So it's a technology that is being used just like Wi-Fi. So if affects if we used to communicate with or not even just Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. If let's say physically we used to use a cat cable, then if you used to use a cat cable to establish cat cable network. If you use a cat cable to establish connectivity, I don't know if you've probably come across this before. Yeah. So you connect it to two computers and then we see that we have established connectivity, then it goes beyond that. So if at first we used to do this, now they found another way. So probably say we can use radio frequency, radio frequency to do transmission. So that is also another science. So this science is going to make it possible for us to share internet, not just have share internet, but also have access to resources, but not through a layered approach that we already know, but through a different approach, which is through airspace. So that's a new technology that's also in place. So it's technology that has just evolved. So with this understanding that we've gathered in regards to we having IP address because we connected to the router of our internet service provider, we want to now look at applications that are actually doing this filtering of content or filtering of resources based on the IP address. And the key takeaway is that you have because you have established connectivity. It says connected. It says connected. And then there's data. So once it says connected and secured and there's data, you've actually started the the process of you're actually inside the TCP IP framework, or your device is actually following the TCP IP model as long as you stay connected. So once you hit a request on an application, all this is taking place, but you're not seeing it. You're not seeing it at all, but it's happening. It's happening in the background. So now with this, let's look at this website. Let's check Netflix. Let's check Netflix. Netflix. So guys, I'm going to netflix.com. Don't worry about this. Let's say just netflix.com. I'm not going to add .ghana or any other uh, domain. No, it's just netflix.com. Probably someone said it's showing netflix.com. So let's close it from here. Good. So this is it. So I'll just say let's copy it. Someone say probably saved or it's cached. So he doesn't believe. Let's open in a new incognito window and let's drop it here. Good. So you realize that it just says netflix.com. It's saying Ghana because I've been visiting Netflix, but I want us to take it fresh as it is. We use a different browser. So netflix.com. But if I hit netflix.com right now, I'm trying to access that website. It doesn't say Netflix UK or Netflix USA or Netflix Russia. It says Netflix Ghana, which means that just by establishing connectivity, by connecting to my router and I having an IP address, it's been able to tell my location and it's telling me that, hey, end user, you are coming from Ghana, so this is the landing page of the site for Ghana. I'm not going to show you resources or content from other countries. It depends on the business case or the use case, or if there are any restrictions or sanctions that have been imposed upon that particular country. That's just one That's just one case. Let's look at another case whereby we want to visit Amazon. Good. So Amazon also is able to filter out your location, and it tells you that, hey, deliver to Ghana. It says we are showing you items that ship to Ghana. So that means there are items on the Amazon service or platform that, or in their data centers, that they don't ship to Ghana. But because you are coming from Ghana, they want to let you know what they can ship to Ghana for. That could be due to supply chains, infrastructures, or their business model. So you can see something, but you could probably, because that ship to Ghana, you can't have it. So that's a business case. So, and that's a very beautiful feature. So that's just for Amazon too. And also this for, let's check Oracle website too. One of my favorites because that one even makes it better. It shows you in a nicer way. So when you come to oracle.com and then probably want to use the resources, it says that, hey, would you like to visit an Oracle site closer to you? A site closer. So there are other business cases to visiting a site closer to you. We look at that in an codefilm. And that could be there are reasons behind that. The availability, ensuring that there's low network latencies, a whole lot of technical terms around that. So you realize that some organizations or Microsoft, for instance, they'll set up a data center. Microsoft sets up data center in Africa. You set up a data center in probably Africa, so that the traffic that is routing directly to first in Africa. That's the traffic that is routing directly to their servers in America. They don't want that to happen. Due to reasons that, or in case of disaster, they don't want that to happen. So they say, no, let's actually have a data center just for Africa. So in that Africa data centers, they can access resources. If there are resources in America that they want to access, like we copy a clone or have a clone of that in their data centers, and also anything that entails or that they are entitled to, will make it available to them in those data centers, so that they don't route all the way, or they don't hit the traffic all the way their from their continent to our continent. due to some reason that we'll look at in another code film. So that's the beauty. So the Oracle site is just telling you that you know you are coming from Ghana and you want to visit resources, probably this server is in America. But we know something, we can take you to a site that is closer to you. So if you're thinking about network and then network issues, it says, no, don't worry, just visit the Oracle Ghana and you'll be fine. So once you hit visit Oracle Ghana, you're actually going to go to this Oracle Ghana site. So if there are resources there that you want to access, or even just this country, a localized Oracle resources for this country, you can also look at it. So it's a very beautiful use case, not just for resources and um, information you want to access, but also being able to bring certain information closer to you. Probably you've been speaking to servers all the way in China, and you realize that there are some downtimes and some one or two issues with them. They will just come and establish a data center for that continent, and then whatever resources they have in those servers in that continent, they copy a clone or they bring some of it to the same data centers and also add what your your continent also needs. So that you don't really have to route all the way to that. But if you do route all the way with the same URL, which is like the case of the Oracle. When you hit them now, they'll just reroute you back to the site that is closer to you. It's a beautiful business and software large scale technology approach. Later, we'll look at that in regards to reliability, availability, performance, and security. So we'll look at that later on. So it just makes it nice that if that data center in US blows, they don't lose every information. Or if one data center goes down, it's not like the whole Ghana is gone down. It's not supposed to be the case. If US goes down, it's US that has an issue. Ghana should still be running. But if you want to access resources in US, probably then you have an issue based on how they want to do, whether they'll copy a clone here or there'll be synchronization back and forth between the two servers. It's a big thing we look at. It's a very big thing. We'll look at it very soon, another code film. All right, so that's just by the way. So you actually can see what is happening with the location content filtering. So you see, realize that we've been able to filter our location and then it's showing that here. All right, so someone say, how did you know that I'm coming from Oracle? I'm coming from Ghana, and then we explained that there are bodies in place, and these bodies are the ones going to say to every internet service provider that this internet service provider is coming from Ghana because um, he gave us details or we gave him some number of IP addresses and we were able to tag him or group him as uh, a Ghana internet service provider. So once it does that, you're able to know that, hey, this is coming from Ghana. Because of the IP address, these guys here are administered to the internet service provider here. So we all went individually. Tigo, Airtel Tigo went, MTN went, Vodafone went, and then they gave to everybody their IP addresses that they should work with because the submarine cables have all come into the continent and then they have started the distribution. You get it? So based on that, then they start doing their work, doing their coordination, ensuring that everything is managed appropriately. So they have done that already. So once you just hit, you send your information. The keyword is the IP address. You know, the assigned IP address because for you to be able to identify every computer on the network, you have to give them an IP address. That's the label. That's the address. You get it. So we are not going to use what do you call it? Um, let's say if I say domain name, someone say yeah, you're saying you don't need domain names. You need domain names, but I'm saying yeah, we're not going to use a method that we do not know of, but we want to use numbers. So numbers is one way. So we are using numbers to number or um, group all of them. So numbers, so number one, number two, we use it to identify everybody. That's the numbering system they're using, which is IP address. So this IP address we are using to identify all the devices in the network from that continent. Yeah. Okay, so that's a lot of talk, but so that's basically it. So once you establish that connectivity, uh, this model is in play. All this is happening at once, And then your IP address, as we've explained, is because of the internet service provider you are working with, or you are not working with, but you are using their service or depending on. That IP address has been identified or is known by the bigger authority, which is the Regional Internet Registries. And then because they know that when you are connecting to the servers in US or China via the submarine cables that have been laid down there, they're able to identify you. So you're not going independently to UK and Canada. There are a number of cables for your country. So if you are going to that country, this is Accra, Ghana. So this is Accra, Ghana. Yeah. So if you are going to Accra, Ghana, based on where you are coming from, we know that these are the cables that are coming to Accra, Ghana, and then we share that IP address or that range with with your regional internet registries, and your regional internet registries came and also said, Airtel Tigo, this is for you, this is for you, that's for you. So nothing is hidden. It's all open. Everything is open. That's the understanding. So it's the TCP/IP model. That's all taking that's happening in place because of the datagrams that are being sent. So that's just the understanding of the whole flow model. So in the next course from this will be in two sections. The next course from we are now going to actually look at sorry, this was our previous lectures. We are now going to look at this application as a whole. But before I go, let's look at this again. If you disconnect and you come and do IP config, which means that you shut down this layer, you shut down this physical layer. You don't have this, so you can't access this on the internet for the protocol that is there. We don't want to go into HTTP, HTTPS. So if let's say you want to now go to oracle.com and you shut down this, it's no longer there. How do you get there? You can't get there. So if you go to oracle.com, you realize that it will tell you that this site can be reached, all because you do not have an IP address. And when I say you do not have IP address, you do not have internet, you're not connected to the internet. So your internet service provider, you haven't joined an internet service provider, or you are not registered with an internet service provider. So you can't access those information. The day you get connected, or when you do get connected, as long as you connect, as long as you say connected, now I'm going with MTN routers. As long as you connect, you get an IP address. Yeah. And when you get an IP address, your internet service provider went to talk to the regional internet registries. And those internet registries have given them some number of IP address to identify them as MTN. And those cables were all laid under the ocean. So those cables are all laid there. So they know where you're coming from because of the basic TCP/IP model we've started looking at. So that's it for this code film. The next code film, we're actually going to look at how practical it is in the sense of we seeing the datagram moving. So we use our own application that we built to do that. So the application that we built is a location content filtering gateway. So we'll look at that in the next code film. So that will be so stay tuned for the second half, and then let's just start and let's just look at the practical flow of the datagram and the application that we built. We've understood everything we need to understand with regards to regional internet registries and then the submarine cables that are flowing under the ocean to ensure that our work of connecting to resources in any country is being done. So all the hosts there that would like to send traffic to and fro, this is the infrastructure that is being put in place for cable internet. If you don't want this, then you can decide to go with Elon Musk Starlink to set up satellites in a constellation. All right, so that'll be for this code phone, and stay tuned for the next half. Thank you.